vibes only. God 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 vibes only.
Good vibes.
Thank you for tuning in to the Push It Forward Podcast Network. I'm your humbled executive producer, Harut, and this is the Cosmic Convos podcast. On Cosmic Convos, Brother Rod and myself gets into how to utilize sidereal astrology as a powerful organizing tool for your life. Whether you're talking about starting a family, getting married, raising children, starting a business, going into a new career, what career you need to choose, and a whole host of other topics relevant to everyone's life. All right. Make sure you check us out on Patreon, where we release exclusive content to all of our patrons, and you get the opportunity to directly interact with us and ask questions and even help us determine the shows that we cover on our weekly podcast. All right? Thank you for tuning in and enjoy.
You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation, the place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Harut, and I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh, brother, enjoying my life. How about yourself, Ken?
Hey, man, just, like I keep saying, man, working on taking it to the next level or whatnot, man, trying to get like, my brother right here or whatnot.
Don't let him fool y'all. He's right with me, right? He's right with me, y'all.
Hey, man, listen, but without getting too far, I want to remind you all, make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel or whatnot. Make sure you hit that notification bell, so you can stay in tune and see when we go live and everything like that. And if you want to connect with us on other platforms and everything like that, you can find Push It Forward Media Group and Caliprusia Astrology. You can find Push It Forward Media Group on Instagram at PUSHITFWD. And go follow us on Instagram as well at Cosmic Convos, at COSMICCONVO on Instagram. That's the Cosmic Convos Instagram page. From there, you can get to all of the other platforms, all the different outlets that we are on and everything like that. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
You can hit me up via Facebook or IG at Shechem Ra, or you can, and even on at Facebook, you even go to Caliprusia Astrology on Facebook, and I'm there as well. You can even book appointments on Facebook, and then also you can hit me up via Caliprusia Astrology at Gmail, and you can even visit the website at caliprusiaastrology.com.
Indeed, big up to that, man. And again, man, congrats on the website up there, whatnot. The website is fire, so definitely make sure y'all go check that out or whatnot. Book them sessions, sign up for them classes or whatnot, man, and so you can take it to the next level. You understand what I'm saying? Indeed. Before we get rolling, real quick, I want to do a quick ad for you all and whatnot. As you know, we have this podcast, and Ra and myself, we're in two separate sides of the country or whatnot. And, it's a lot of people out there getting into the podcast game. So if you want to get into the podcast game, I would definitely recommend you all check out Zencastr. Zencastr is an all-in-one podcast production suite that gives you studio quality audio and video without needing all the technical know-how. The way how it does it is basically it records each guest locally and then uploads crystal clear audio and video right into the suite so you can have high quality raw materials to work with or whatnot. And that's how Ra and myself has been able to do this podcast from two totally different sides of the country. And when you listen to us on the audio platforms and everything like that, you can hear, it sounds like we're in the same room or whatnot. So we're able to do this with the Zencastr platform or whatnot. And I definitely recommend that you use it. If you use the promo code zen.ai/Cosmic Convos Pod, you can get 30% off of your pro membership with Zencastr. And that is available in the description of this video and all the other platforms that you're checking on. So definitely big up to Zencastr and definitely check that out. All right. Moving on. We're on episode 15 of season 5. Seem like we're floating through this season. We're 10 episodes from the end of this particular season. What you think about that, Rob?
Yeah, it's moving fast, man. It's moving fast. It's gonna come up on us, but we're gonna be ending this one and starting the next one. So um, I'm enjoying this season quite a bit, though. Definitely.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. I think we've um, been able to fine tune some things. You know what I'm saying? Be able to really capitalize on certain topics and cover things in a way that I really don't see them being done. So I'm definitely pleased with our progress and the overall content that we've been delivering this season for sure or whatnot.
No, no doubt.
And this episode will definitely follow in that vein as well or whatnot. Last episode though, before we get all the way into it, yeah, you know what I mean. Last episode was a pretty good one or whatnot. Man, a lot of people said they actually been waiting for us to break that down or whatnot. Man, what's the feedback you've been getting on that Fire Nakshatras, Fire Sign Nakshatras episode?
They're waiting on the next one.
Indeed, yeah, man. I mean, like I said, we have topics for infinity. We hadn't even scratched the surface. Or whatnot. So definitely be on the lookout for that next Nakshatra episode. Definitely will be coming up real soon or whatnot. But yeah, let's go ahead and push it along or whatnot. We had something planned for day and then again, caught an audible or whatnot because things are fluid. We're living in a very interesting time. A lot of people, especially when you talk to a lot of maybe at least the generation before us, they don't have a lot of landmark things that they remember, or they do, but I don't know. I think we've especially within the past few years, we've witnessed some stuff that's definitely going to be in some textbooks, for sure. You know what I mean? I remember reading about the Black Plague and all these different things like that. We've experienced some interesting things, and just this past week, we saw something that got quote unquote leaked.
Mm-hmm.
Out
Mm-hmm.
that the Roe V Wade might be in a little trouble
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
So this is almost like a post check type episode, but just more focused in. Because there's a reason why these different things are happening right now. So we definitely want to tell you about what's happening transit wise, what's happening, up in the quote unquote heavens. That's contributing to what we're seeing right now or whatnot. So you're definitely going to enjoy this one or whatnot, and definitely take heed because, like I said, these are all things that you should know because it impacts you in certain ways and different things like that. So you definitely want to pay attention to this and definitely look at your chart and everything like that and see how these things are going to impact you as well or whatnot. So shoot, man, let's go ahead and jump in it.
Yeah. Let's dive in. You know, a lot of conversation has been on Twitter, IG, Facebook, just regarding this whole decision that's been passed down by the Supreme Court and by the federal government, and that now it's up for grabs. Whereas you know the right of a woman to um, choose life over death, right, with regards to an embryo or a child in the womb, has become you know uh, it's become where the state is going to have options to you know take the law into their own hands. And you know I'm not either or, right? uh, I think that it's you know a very sensitive topic, for especially for us, for women. I've heard a lot of different things as regarding to the states. Several states have already kind of positioned themselves that they're going to limit or reduce the ability for a woman to um, exercise that option. And I don't know which state. Don't quote me on this, people. It may be Texas. I know it's a southern
Texas is
state. I know
Texas
it's a
is one.
but they were talking about where a woman would only have the right to exercise that option if she's under her life is endangered. So rape or anything like that won't be a legitimate cause to move in those lines of taking action. And so it's just interesting how, you know, and I've been noticing this. I don't know if you've noticed this at all, Tev. It seems like states are taking on more of a governmental role nowadays. The federal side is kind of waning to some degree, and the states have become more of the operative uh, role, taking the operative role in government. Something interesting happened not too long ago. Someone that I know very close to me um, start dealing with certain uh, forces of government, and I didn't even know this. So I just thought there was a FBI, right? I thought it was just a Federal Bureau of Investigation, right? They actually have a Bureau of Investigation per state. I didn't know that, right?
Oh yeah,
They have,
absolutely, man.
so they have a
I
Georgia
mean,
Bureau, they have a Colorado Bureau,
GBI
right?
GBI is. I mean, you know
Hmm.
what? I mean, I live in Georgia, but I hear about GBI is pretty prevalent in Georgia. They always
Hmm.
talking about the GBI. We see the GBI. You know what I mean? Rappers be talking about the GBI. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Right.
yeah, that's definitely a thing for sure.
So it seems the federal side is kind of taking a backseat, and this is one of those major decisions that will change the game. That now each state will have the autonomy and the decision making power to implement or to veto that particular right. And you'll find that once this kind of thing settles, people will begin to migrate. People will begin to change and restructure themselves around where they're going to live and where they're going to pay their taxes, right?
Right.
Um, and that's the one thing about the United States, because it's the third largest by landmass as far as the world is concerned. Considering by comparison to other nations, you would think it's small, but it's fairly large.
Oh
Even
yeah,
and
yeah,
you
absolutely.
remember coming to America, right? When Eddie Murphy and Arsenio was saying, "Oh, the landmass is so big," right? It's a pretty big country we live in. So,
Right.
um, you know, because it's so large and because it has so many ways of doing things, you're going to see these states start to take over control, and people really line up to, and it's not over, right? I'm sure this is going to be something that's going to be picketed and marched upon, and
They had a
it's not
protest
over.
downtown here in
Protest,
Atlanta.
yeah, it's not over.
Yeah.
But at this junction, right, uh, the way things are happening in America and the destiny of America, it's change. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the one constant that we know is across the board is change,
Change,
right?
change, change.
So that change, right, is coming all the way down to the people via these decisions that were instituted, some plus 50 plus years ago, you know, um, and you know, the case that was presented back in those days, you had a different moral compass. You had a different parameter as far as women's rights are concerned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, at that time, this is a time when women's rights was high on the list, right? And it's not to say it's even less higher. In fact, it's probably even more prominent now. But because civil rights and that type of era of human rights was, on the table, right? That was something that was really kind of dealt with, at that time, in the sense of, let's make a decision, let's put it out there and let the people, let's decide what the people are going to deal with. So it's kind of like the sign of the times, when these laws are changed and passed, or done away with. But when we look at America, interestingly enough, it's ruled by Jupiter, which is laws, right?
Right.
Um, laws, laws, laws. Um, it's a country. We're a country that, you know it's governed by, judicial bodies, right, that have the ability to implement certain levels of reality as far as what we're going to experience. And Jupiter doing what it does, right? Because it's moving in a way, and where it's moved, the homeland, right, is going to experience, right, a recapitulation of what these laws mean, what these laws are about. Jupiter is in the fourth house of Pisces, and Jupiter rules the ascendant of America. So it just makes perfect sense that at this time, this would be something that would come down from on high, right? The laws of the land are governed primarily by the ninth house, right? The ninth house is, Leo, and it's ruled by the sun. So that particular ninth lord, which is the sun, look where it is. It's in the fifth house, and the fifth house primarily deals with the welfare. And I'm talking about mundane astrology. It
Right.
deals with the welfare of children, right? So, the government, the aspect of the government that is the judicial side, which is the ninth house, judges, right? High courts, right? Is making that call, and it's exalted in the fifth house. So, this is something that, like you said, was leaked, but you can only hold back certain knowledge for so long. So it's affecting the people at large. And this particular judgment is now where that particular ascendant lord in the fourth is going to have the ramifications there. The people themselves are going to feel it, right? The people themselves are going to have to imbibe what the courts have made the decision on. And Jupiter is in the 12th from the Lord of the Ninth. Right? It's in the hand. It's literally the loss of, right, or dealing with the expenditure of, or dealing with the sacrifice that this particular court system will have that has made, and the people will feel it. The people feel the sacrifice. It's the fourth house in regards to the fifth. 12th house is behind it. So not only that, right?
Right.
We got Pluto, right, doing his deal, and Pluto is in the second house. People, it is right. Second house is a house of values, right? So this is now changed. The values of America have changed. I mean, considering just we could go down the list of the values that have changed. We really could. I mean, with regards to LGBTQ matters, with regards to um, just even in school, bullying, and
Right.
just the overall nation itself has changed its perception of a lot of things that were, when I'm sure this good brother and myself were young, you know, bullying wasn't considered something that was, you know, an issue. You dealt with it. You kind of grew up. You dealt with the bully. You fought the bully, right? And you moved on, and life didn't, stop. But now it's a really big thing in schools. Bullying is a really, really, you can get expelled for bullying at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Just the consideration of values when it comes to um, who's the winner, right? When I was a kid, when you had field day, right, you had a gold ribbon, a silver, and a bronze, and everybody else, right? Good job. Now everybody gets a ribbon, right?
Right.
There's no losers anymore, right? The values of America is changing. And so with these values changing, not only does it is it regarding just everyday life with regards to people. I mean, we can talk about, we've talked about even in the past shows we talked about with regards to the Me Too movement, right?
Right.
Those are oriented around values. Those actions and things that happen are oriented around values. Well, Pluto is doing its job in reconstructing, deconstructing, and rebuilding, right? It's the phoenix, right? The Bennu, right? Where it dies in the ashes and is reborn from, you its own demise. Well, America is experiencing these things now where these old laws, and it's not an old law in the sense of something that was instituted in the beginning, but anytime you deal with a value system, it's going to be affected. Whereas this is something that America, the freedom of choice in regards to life versus, what do they call it, pro-choice versus pro-life.
Right.
That was the core value, for a long time. And you've had all kind of different, you know, um, protests and shutting down of Planned Parenthoods and all kind of different things that have happened over the years. Well, now Pluto is saying, look, right, you're going to have to deal with this core value, whether it's pro-life or pro-choice,
Right.
right? Pluto is naturally even in the second house. That's why it's a return, right? It's in the second house of America's chart. So America always has had this kind of reconditioning or resituating itself around its value systems. You have to consider slavery, then after slavery, post slavery, right? And post slavery, we're talking about Jim Crow laws. After Jim Crow laws, we have all these different kind of recapitulations and changes of value systems. So this is the norm for America. But now, not only is it the norm, it's the chickens coming home to what? Coming home
Roost.
to roost.
Right.
So within that context, right, we have to look and kind of see. And, me and this good brother were talking about, you know, America is now focused more, and it should be focused more on the homeland because, I'm sure America, if Putin didn't make such a statement with regards to nuclear war, I'm sure we would have a different approach to the Ukraine. But I think it's a chess, not
Absolutely.
checkers game. And because he's made that statement, America is realizing that we just better leave this one alone and do as much as we can from afar. I mean, Biden has
You,
made that statement for all intents and purposes.
you can see
So
this. You can see that dynamic playing out on a bunch of different levels right now, right? Because, um, you know, you mentioned federal versus state, right? So we got people, states having their own identities, and that's always been the case, but now it seems like it's getting more codified, right?
it is
Right.
absolutely, it's becoming more prominent. I mean, you can even use another example: marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
right? Marijuana, marijuana is federally illegal,
Right.
but per state, right? Colorado, Washington, California, right? These states are, look, we're making it legal. So, this kind of, you know, balancing act of the powers that be, where it's now is it's the state's right versus the federal, the government's right. You know, this
You
is where we're seeing this kind of, reshifting of things. And
you also
so,
see you also see it in just amongst the people as well, right? Because even with my other podcast, First We Build, I see the comments be going on fire, about this whole kind of foundational Black American versus Black immigrants thing, and it's like everybody is starting to focus in on their group and kind of codifying what what I mean, their group, their existence, because it's like people have realized that when you try to cast a net to catch all, a lot of stuff gets missed.
Sure.
So it's like people are trying to really reassure their own existence. You understand what I'm saying? And they're all respective groups and stuff like that, so you can make sure you get what you need to get, or live the life that you want to live. So I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. Um, you know, when we even look deeper into these transits in regards to, some very recent changes, Neptune, has just entered into the fourth house of America, right? And,
Let me switch to
Neptune deals
second.
with, the visions, the kind of, ideals that we have. And, you know, it's a time when the homeland is reassessing the ideals, right?
Right.
You know, the core of the nation, you know, no one wants war, right? No one. I mean, even the president, and that's odd for America, right?
Right. 'Cause you remember, like, I remember September 11th. It
Yeah,
was different, man. Like, like, Cats was like, send me. You know what I mean? It was
right,
people that was
right,
like, they like, it was like, the homies them shot up the block, and they about to
right.
go get their get back. You know what I'm saying? It was a whole different vibe.
Definitely a big difference. So, now no one wants war. It's like almost to the point where just mind your business. We want our country to stay, for all intents and purposes. We want to help, but we don't want to get too involved where we become part of the problem. And so
Right.
these reassessment of ideals, right? The visions or the vision of America, right, is no longer a quote unquote police officer or, a kind of do as I say type individual. It's now, do as I do. And that has changed a great deal because America has been always at the forefront of trying to get other people to, capitulate to, or to force others to do their bidding or their will. And it's no longer it's a it's a dead it's a dead fish in the water. No one is even pushing or promoting that as an ideal anymore. And
Right.
the other
You.
countries around the world are now realizing that, it's catching up to a global mindset is
Yeah.
slow for many countries, but now it's almost permeating the world, where
Right.
now I have rights and you're not going to infringe on what I want to do, and if you do, then well, we'll deal. So, it's time for America to wake up in the sense that, you know what's good for the goose ain't always good for the
For
gander.
the gander. Yeah.
And Neptune is making sure that the people, the homeland, is taking notice of the illusions that America has portrayed for the past 165 years, right? At least the last 80 years, right?
Right.
The illusion that, we're this oligarch, this all-knowing, power, that's gone, right? That's an illusion, right? Neptune deals in illusions. This notion that we're all good, right? People know better now, right?
Right.
Because the internet and the media has opened the door for us to be
Absolutely.
able to see reality beyond our own, quote unquote misperceptions. And so now, since Roe versus Wade is on the board, right, now we're in a place where that's an ideal to have, complete freedom, complete autonomy to do what you want as an individual. And I'm not against or for it. Remember, I don't I'm not siding with either, right? People would ask what I do I think that women should have that right to choose. I think women should have the right to do what women feel best for women to do, and they should make that decision on their own. I'm not a woman, so I can't put myself in that position. That's why I can't make that call, right? Only women have that power, right? Um, Interestingly enough, we have a new woman, right, that is entered into the Supreme Court, right? Interesting, just timing, right?
There's,
Um,
alongside with that though too, there's also some talks of like some states starting to institute a lot of these same states that have kind of made stricter abortion laws. Also institute mandatory DNA tests for the father.
mm-hmm, I've
That's
heard
been
of that.
floated around as well.
Definitely, you know,
Yeah,
these states are taking over, right? And that's the way America was kind of designed. If you
supposed
really
to be like that.
understand it, it's supposed to be
It's,
that way. You can
right,
choose what state you want to live in, and where
right,
you want to pay your taxes, and who you want to put in office, and what you
right,
would like to experience as an American citizen, right? If you want to live in Texas and experience the Texan mindset and reality of life, you can move, right? You want to go to California and live in the sunshine and pay high rates of that's your choice, right?
right.
That's your choice, right?
And
But
it's interesting though. I mean, because it's been happening, but like I was saying earlier, it's kind of getting codified, and you're seeing like, I mean, because I'm not apolitical. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know how I would categorize myself politically, but I'm definitely not team anybody on that side. But what I've observed is a lot of the states, Texas, Georgia, what's another good one? Really, Texas and Georgia, maybe North Carolina to a certain degree. A lot of these states that are facing a lot of controversy from the left, about these type of things of abortion or those type of things and stuff like that. The economies of these states seem to be doing quite well, and the people from the more liberal states, people are
mhm,
running like heck from
I've
those
seen that.
places.
Yeah,
And they flood into Georgia, to Texas, to
yeah.
North Carolina, even Florida in certain cases. You know what I mean? They're flooding to
Hmm.
these places, so it's like you're starting to see, like America is getting to a point to where you're starting to see, like, all right, where does this line of thinking, where does it go,
It's
right? Where
changed
does it take
completely.
us?
Yeah,
How does it manifest? Because all right, yeah, you want an A, B, and C, but now rent is this high,
hmm hmm
taxes is this high. You understand?
yeah,
Is this much harder to start a bill? You know what I mean? You're starting to get to, and now you got to make, you're more informed to make a decision
right. You
on
are, and I
how
mean,
you want to
just
position yourself.
just considering political alignments, right?
Right.
You see,
Exact.
I never would imagine I would see people of African descent wearing MAGA hats. Right?
Uh-huh.
I know
Right.
quite a few that are promoting, right, that side of the equation. Right?
You know,
It's becoming
but
more prevalent. I mean, it's surprising, but it's a part of the reality we're experiencing in this country.
well, the interesting thing about that, right? And again, I talk about this on the First We Build podcast, is that prior to the Civil Rights Bill, black people were Republicans.
True, true.
You know, that
Right.
wasn't that long ago. So it's like, the Civil Rights Bill, got black people on the Democratic side or whatnot, but and been kind of riding that train. But now people are starting to, like you were saying before, question certain things. Like, do I really, are these really my values? Do I really agree with these set of values? Really, are these really serving me?
Hmm.
People are starting to question that, and it's coming off, in extreme ways, like you said, people wearing the MAGA hat and stuff like that. But really, what's happening is that people are starting to really kind of reevaluate things and being like, is this working? You understand what I'm saying? Is this really something that we should be pursuing or doing or something like that? And then that's
Mhm.
that, kind of dichotomy that's happening.
No, you're 100% correct. And the interesting other piece of the puzzle is that, now since Neptune is doing his dance, right,
Hmm.
and moving into this whole its own sign, right, it's directly in opposition to Virgo, where America's natal Neptune is. Right?
Right.
It's directly in opposition. So we have an opposition of ideals, right? Saturn, being with that Neptune concretizes and kind of gives us an old school kind of idealistic way of thinking. Well, now Neptune's on the other side of the equation saying, is that the real way that you want to be, the vision that you have for yourself for the next 21 years, the next 165 years? This is why these things have come to pass, because, we realizing that, it's a part of reassessing what these old moralistic purviews are.
Right.
You Um, Neptune in the fourth house gives us the kind of it makes the nation feel differently about, the long-term perception of what we feel like is upright or healthy.
Hmm.
And that's where Neptune changes the game. Neptune is, considered like Poseidon. It's a pitch. And in fact, the symbol of it is looks like a pitchfork. You know,
Right. And
all
folks,
of
this
these
is
old things kind of come up from
it's
the bottom
Neptune.
of the ocean, and it surfaces and it hits the ocean, hits the shores, and you're looking at it like, what is this we're dealing with? What is this Roe versus Wade?
Right.
Why did we decide that? You the interesting thing also is that America's founded on Christian values, even though it's supposed to be a nation where church and state are separate. Inside of the fabric of America is Christian values. You got to consider holidays,
Yep.
right? Holidays are a hallmark to let you know what values nation upholds. We don't get Ramadan off, right?
No.
We get Christmas off, right?
Right.
Um, the actual um, national anthem, right? What's on your dollar bill, right? All these things are symbolized by Christian values that have kind of been woven into the fabric of America. What days do you have off? You have Sunday, right? Off of throughout the week. I mean, it's just we don't see it, but it's very well inculcated into the society we live in. The Pledge of Allegiance, right?
Right.
All these things, right, have Christian values woven into them. Well, now the moral mindset of the nation is up for display, right? It's up for us to take a look. And Roe versus Wade is one where you have two sides in opposition. That's what an opposition produces. Is seventh house matters, but seventh house matters are two sides of the equation, a seesaw, right? The seesaw says, okay, well, one side says, yes, we're moral, right? We don't do this, we don't do that. And the other side says we're not, where it's not about morality, it's about choice,
Right.
right? That again, we have a separation of what? Church
Church.
and state. But do we really have that separation? This is what is now becoming prevalent in what is the conversation, the real conversation. See, behind the moral aspect is religion.
Right.
That's what's behind, that's the engine behind the morality piece. Is, you know, according to what tenets are you subscribing to have a moral purview? Most
Right.
morality is found in religion.
Hmm.
It just is. And this country, being ruled by Jupiter, was founded by individuals that were primarily oriented around Christian thinking. So now there's a real decision at hand, isn't it? Now there's a
Yeah.
real conversation to say, are you really going to allow church versus state to exist? Or are you going to make these decisions for people based on what you consider right or wrong?
Right.
That's what Neptune is asking, right? And Pluto is doing its job in the second house, saying it's time to reconstruct, it's time to die to certain things and be reborn.
Right.
This is why we look at these outer planets so heavily, because they're the ones that really tell the tide of these nations that have existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. A human being can exist, can kind of inculcate these, long-term perspectives and long-term, um, you know, purviews that only nations and companies and corporations and things that exist well beyond human years can embody. So, it's just the times that we live in that now we're really going to ask ourselves, and the states are going to now play the role of saying, yep, we are a state. And think about it like this: Utah, right?
Right.
Utah is a Mormon what?
State.
State. Ask them if Roe versus Wade is going. I can guarantee you, right? If you live there, you will not be pro-choice, right? It's going to be pro-life. Um, the what do you call it? The Bible Belt states,
Yeah.
Oklahoma, Kentucky, right? Tennessee, right? Missouri,
Hmm.
you know, all these states where these Bible Belt is. Oh, you best believe, right? If it's left up to them, pro-life.
Right.
Where now you're going to have, and this is going to shift the tide, where these more quote unquote, and the word liberal is even changing now, but where there's not so much the religious purview. California, New York, right? um Georgia is a definitely, right, a one of those Bible Belt states.
Not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore, but it still lingers in the sense that you have those. I'm talking about in the back, not in the city, right? I'm talking
Hmm.
about Savannah, the other cities that are around, kind of outside of the major metropolitan area of Atlanta. They
I've even
still
heard.
have some of those old values.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. South. I mean, it's like it's two different states. It's two different places.
That's
I mean,
exactly what I'm saying, right?
somebody was. It's not like a serious thing right now, but somebody's even floated the idea of metropolitan Atlanta being its own state.
That's wild. But it would make sense because
It would
the
make sense.
values are very different.
Oh yes, huge difference. Very huge
Um,
difference. But
Alabama, right?
that's where
So now,
that's Georgia's economy is coming from, the metro area. So that's the kind of, I mean, it's like the traditional Georgians or whatever, your rural Georgians. That's the love hate kind of situation it has with it,
sure,
because
sure, absolutely, um, Illinois, all of these states that are not religiously oriented, you'll probably see migrations of
right,
people changing. And think about it. Neptune dissolves, doesn't it? Right?
yeah,
It's a dissolutionary process. So it's going to dissolve, right, and change and and not only reorient, but just like a tide, like a tidal wave, start moving different things around within the core of America.
right,
This is what Neptune does, right? And being in opposition is going to be based on those ideals. Where are you going to live now? Well, I'm going to California where I can make a choice. I'm going to New
mm,
York. I'm going to Illinois. I'm going to live in DC, right? Wherever those things wherever those ideals are that you feel are best suiting to you and your lifestyle, is going to be where people are going to choose to change their residence to. And you're going to have a diminution in certain states and an excess in others. So this is what Neptune is now going to do for the next, right, 14 years, while Pluto is going to do his dance for the next 20 years.
right,
So interestingly enough, not only is Neptune in the sense of where it's transiting, it's also in opposition to Saturn,
Yep.
right? And Saturn is one of those planets that deals in things that are, right, based on, right, life or death, right? Things that are moral, things that are old, things that are from the beginning, right? When we say old, we ever say old school, that's Saturn, right?
Right.
Tradition, Saturn. Well, Neptune is in opposition to it. Neptune is saying, hey, okay, yeah, we had those laws and things set up, but how are we going to move forward? And it's a very kind of, um, you know, imbalancing position because they stand for very different things, right? Neptune is, kind of a higher octave of Jupiter, right? It really is. It's kind of, that's why in what we call, Western astrology, Neptune rules Pisces, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a higher octave of that. So when we look at these things, right, we look at, Neptune dealing with, you know, things that are around oriented around escapism, you know, trying to get, the government is trying to get out of this role. I don't want to make that decision anymore, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
I'm trying to get out of this. I'm trying to get away from that role. And a lot of, I know you've heard of libertarians, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
You know what? I kind of, yeah. I mean, I think at its root, America is supposed to be more of a libertarian type of country, anyway.
exactly. It
You
is,
know.
right?
Yeah.
It is, right? Um, Neptune deals with faith,
Hmm.
because remember it's a higher octave of Jupiter. So, this kind of false faith in government is now changing the hands from the federal side to the state side.
Right.
You know, looking to big bad, to big brother, to big government. That day is dying, right? Because you're finding that the people want to make the decisions for themselves, and they should. You should have a state where if you want to live and be pro-life, you can go there, right? And live your happy life as if you, because America is a country of laws. If that state has that as a law, and that's where your moral compass resides, you should have that right to live there.
Right.
If your state, right, is one that is pro-choice, and you feel like you may be best suited to live in that type of environment, you should have that choice
Right.
where there's no overwhelming arch of government making all the decisions for every single body. If you want to smoke weed, right, you should have that right to go live in Washington state. The taxes will dictate it, right? The compass of the environment in which you live in, your children will be, all these things are up to you as a citizen of the grander scheme of the United States of America. That's what
Right.
made the country in and of itself great in the first place, because you have little countries within the big country.
Right.
But now the federal government, the government at large is saying, look, we're washing our hands of that, right? Washing is in water, Neptune,
Hmm.
right? The god of the ocean, right? Washing, letting it go, right? Releasing. That's what the 12th house is all about. Pisces, Neptune, releasing, letting go, surrendering.
Right.
Well, this in opposition to Saturn, surrendering what? Surrendering things that were old,
Yep.
surrendering things that were about control, surrendering things that were about structure, about moral purviews. This is how Neptune is doing its dance, and it just entered into the fourth house as of April, I think the 14th, right? just recently. Isn't it
Yeah.
interesting that just when it enters, now we begin this conversation. This is how you know what the ascendant is. If it were
Right.
Scorpio, I know it's an old thing I'm digging up, right?
Yeah.
If it was Scorpio, right? Neptune would be where? Right? It'd be in a completely
In the
different position, wouldn't it?
yeah. It'd be in the fifth
Be in the
house.
fifth house.
Yeah.
But the fifth house deals in the welfare of children, but it's not in the sense of these things coming from an old, from a heartfelt perspective, from the overall encompassing land of the people, right? The people themselves, and it says of the people, by the people, for the people. Well, Neptune is in there changing that conversation. Saturn is in the 10th house, right? And the 10th house being government, big government, is made those old traditional laws. And Roe versus Wade, like I said, it's only 50 years old. It's not like it's 100 and some odd years old. But considering this was always an old conversation. This was always an old conversation in America. Right? It's not something new. It just that's why it went to court, because it was a conversation that happened previously.
Right.
Right? There's a big scare around now that, there's going to be these backwater clinics, right, that are going to be doing these kind of under the table type of operations. Well, guess what? That's already been here, folks. Right? That ain't nothing new, right? It isn't, right? It's not like, I mean, you got people getting BBLs, right, in backwater operations. I'm not
Right.
saying that's, it's not a laughing matter as far as, pro life versus pro choice, but I'm saying that is not something new where people go to auxiliary health or backdoor health operations to try to get things done. I mean, consider this for one moment, how much exactly fourth house is mother's right. That's a good what is that, pro legend movement? Uh, good observation. Fourth house is mother, right?
Right.
Homeland. What do they call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Um, mother call it
Mother.
motherland, right?
Yeah.
Right. This is what we're dealing with. Women's rights is fourth house matters, not fifth, fourth. See,
Right.
the woman is the one that has the child.
Right.
So we're talking fourth house matters. Excellent point, Pro Legend. Good job on that. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out Michelle's.
um, you know, Saturn definitely deals with, things that are harsh and real,
Yeah.
And Neptune is saying, are these, because think about it, Neptune is conjunct Saturn in the natal chart.
It is.
America started off with slavery. You got to think about this for just a second, right? The values, and not even the values, but the ideals were, dealing with people that was free labor. Free labor, right? So when
Right.
Neptune does his thing and it moves into the fourth house now, all of those things that were brought up until this point about old issues are going to have to be addressed. I'm sure, and I'm not saying that this will matter, because I'm never one that would even think that the United States would ever really issue reparations. But don't be surprised if it comes up in the next 3 to 4 years. Right? Don't be surprised if it's something that really becomes more of a conversation, not something that will be done, but more of a conversation. And see, if we were smart, right? If people of African descent had a real sense of intelligence, and you're going to get a special treat when we talk about people of African descent in this country here, right? Before this season is up.
Quick thing.
But
Look,
go ahead.
look to that point, 1865. Look what's in the fourth house. That's when slavery, the eradication of the 13th Amendment.
Right. You're right.
The Neptune's back in Pisces.
I'm just saying it would be interesting if reparation comes around, right?
Yeah, but I mean, but as far as like, these moments where we've been doing things this way, then it comes into question, right? We got Neptune opposition of itself, then Neptune's opposition of itself back then when that same, with a different thing, we're talking about slavery, was up in question. Boom.
I'm just saying, right? Don't these things come full circle. That's when we say full circle. Now you know why we say full circle. Right?
Right. Right. Steve.
So don't be surprised that this is just maybe the tip of the iceberg where conversations are going to be brought up on these old values. When you were talking about how you treat the Native Americans, right? And they have a process where they have been quote unquote I said quote unquote repaid.
And that was the last time that happened. That
Right.
Neptune was opposition.
I'm saying.
So this is gonna be major.
I'm just saying, right? And it stays there for 14 years.
Right.
So in the next, I'm telling you, 3 to 4 years, it could very well be a very serious conversation because, I mean, and I'm not one to fantasize, which is Neptune, right? But I'm not one to fantasize that we now, since we have a individual of color, notice I didn't call her a black woman. Okay? We have an individual of color that is of African descent, right? Because a black woman is a special class of kind of conversation. And I know people talk about these kind of, conversations where black is the status and you have all these kind of, different, what do you
My
call it?
jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction, all that kind of stuff, right? Look,
Shout out.
I don't want to get
Shout out
into
to
the
them
more
brothers.
conversation, right? But just know more means black anyway. So
Right.
catch, right? You're talking, one word, one descriptive word versus another, right?
Right.
But when I say black, like Obama is not a black president. He's a president that is biracial, and of that biracial mixture, he is of African descent. Kamala Harris, right, is biracial, right? The first person we had run for office that we can consciously remember within the last 30, 40 years was Jesse Jackson. Now he was black, right?
Right.
There's an experience, there's a way of life that comes with those types of things that but we're talking about the choice of individuals that you marry, who you're dealing with as far as your everyday experience, who you're fighting for, where you come from, all those different things, right? And people say,
Right.
well, Obama's black. Not really, right? His
No.
growing up process and all those things were very different than what we consider the person that comes from the average inner city or the regular kind of walk of life of a regular city or town in America where we grow up in a certain way. So I'm not saying that because there's a woman that is of African descent in office, because of course you got to look at who a person deals with as far as their marital status, how they kind of view themselves and why they would make certain decisions. But it is interesting that because she is now part of the Supreme Court, right? And didn't she took somebody's place, didn't she? Right? Didn't she take somebody's place?
Yeah, she took what's her name? What are they call? Judge, the lady, she just died. Ruth.
Right. Can't remember her name. I know I was just saying I knew she took a woman's place. But I want you to think about this for just a split second. Right. Isn't it interesting that the other fella,
Ruth
right?
Badger Ginsburg, yeah.
Yeah, she took her place. Who's the other person of African descent that's there on
Clarence
this?
Thomas.
Uh-huh. And whom
Yeah.
did he marry? Right.
Yeah.
I want you to think about, we get so excited because we see someone that looks like us and looks like they have African descent. They're in office, but you got to
Right.
look deeper than what is being, portrayed, because every single person that has been in office and power has someone that is not there of their own capitulation in their homestead, or they come from a capitulation that is not of the norm of what we consider growing up in the way that normal black people grow up in this country. So there's kind of a game that is being played here. But
Well,
don't be surprised if
right.
we find that this conversation that reparations comes up, and if it gets to the point of where it's voted, look who's going to, even if it gets to that conversation, look who's going to vote. Is it, I mean, you see what I mean? It's chess, not
Right.
checkers, right? You put
Right.
someone in office or in position that's not going to have that same or lengthy perception of what another person that looks like them goes through, because they're going to now have the
Mhm.
opportunity to vote on this, and they're not going to vote from where the normal average black person would vote from. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. Is this is something that is considerably undermined when you put certain people in positions. I was
Right.
looking at her and I didn't know she was married to. I did not know, but when I found out, I say, here we go again. Right? It's always the same modus operandi where they put someone in office that just doesn't look. And I'm not against LGBTQ community or your rights. That's between you and the government. But I'm just
Right.
saying the conversation of civil right of 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 reparations was skipped over, right? And we went
Right.
right to LGBTQ rights. What happened? We put Obama in office. We put Obama in office. And what happened? Something went over, it skipped over. It's the
Right.
same game, but don't be surprised if the next 3 to 4 years there's a big conversation that begins to brew about these old debts that need to be paid. Because guess what Neptune rules? It rules like something similar to the 12th house, and the 12th house is the repayment of what? The
That.
repayment of debt. So, it's going to be an interesting ride, but this whole Roe versus Wade is just the kind of, thing that fell out of the closet, where now we have to look at, you know, are you going to live a life that is based on church versus church being separate from state, or is state going to have the all consuming power to make the decision of these particular desires that, and rights that women should have?
Right.
So, it's just interesting how things are playing out. But this is how we look at the grand scheme of things when we talk about these planets moving and these slower ones really making an impact in a large way, you know?
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah. I mean, shout out to that, man, because a lot of, especially in the Vedic world, the world of Jyotish, it's really a lot of people don't understand the role of those outer planets. Those and you really get to see it when these things unfold, or whatnot, and how to properly use them and stuff like that, because I mean, a lot of people would overlook Neptune, in that situation. And then you go, a method that we always use is we go back, okay, when the last time this happened, what was going on?
Right.
When it happened, you go back, you see these different things and stuff like that. So definitely big ups to that or whatnot, man. So you definitely want to replay this and listen to check out some other episodes as well. But yeah, this is going to be interesting. And I think, what you were talking about in regards to reparations, I wouldn't be surprised
Hmm.
if something in the form of, because land is something that, of course people, cash payments, but land, I wouldn't be surprised if a state, some area at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. You
I
know.
wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised. But the matter of fact is, and this is what the Nation of Islam has always promoted. But they have a way of doing it in the sense that it's a certain area they want to have access to the sea or major body of water.
Right.
Certain things that the land has to have in order to fit the description of what will be considered viable.
Yeah.
But this is this is nothing new in the sense of being repaid, right? A debt that is owed to those that are of African descent and those that are descendants of slaves. And you
I
know,
wouldn't be surprised if it was Atlanta. Atlanta became, you
Atlanta.
Atlanta. I would see multiple pockets. There's certain
Mhm,
areas, not like how
mhm.
like you got Indian territories, right? You got
Right,
reservations. Certain
right,
areas that's deemed,
right. That is
you
your
know,
area, right,
right.
right. And then when that happens, right, do you get aid just like the other areas get aid? I mean, do you get the best, resources, or do you get hammy? I mean, there's always a trick up the sleeve, right? That they can wiggle out and try to finagle, another reshuffle the deck, if you will. But you know,
It depends. What I tell you one thing, and I man, you guys are gonna love this episode that we've been brewing up and stuff like that. But when you leave Black Americans alone,
we
you
do quite
understand what I'm
well.
saying? We do very well.
We do. Just leave
you
them
know,
be and let us work it out. I mean, Black Wall Street is a great example. And they have a
Rosewood.
new Black Wall Street in Georgia. Not sure of where it is, but I know I've been hearing a lot about it. I know a brother that lived here with his wife and children, and they moved out there to really try to support
Talking
and
about
to be
that
a
big
part of.
they did that they bought a bunch of acres
Yeah,
and stuff like
yep,
that.
yes, in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not mad at it. I'm all for it. I have a dog in that race, right? But
Right.
again, you know, it's a way that we have to consider of doing things when we um, are trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a way to do things, right? And we are just
Right.
not come together as a whole because we don't understand the power of voting, right? Voting is very powerful when you know how to do it. Not against voting. I'm against voting in arbitrary or haphazard ways. But voting, you have to understand that people that understand and see. This is one thing, and I'll leave it at this. Right, when you understand how wise, wickedly wise, the old, I want to say old, the new old masters are. Right, when you have something called gentrification, right? See, when you understand that there's a power in you being consolidated, whether or not you don't want to be in this kind of quote unquote, you know, downtrodden or um, um, what is the word I'm looking for? Um, area that is considered, lower
Dilapidated.
income, right? When before, and I'm just giving an example where I live, right?
Yeah.
So we had three primary neighborhoods, three primary neighborhoods. And they're not big neighborhoods, but they were considered all black or all of African American. So before the airport moved to Denver International Airport, there was an airport called Stapleton. Stapleton is when you landed into Stapleton, you landed basically into Park Hill, which is one of those all black neighborhoods. The businesses and all of the lifeblood that was flowing through those areas, that area, because the airport is an area of taxis, of sky caps, of pilots, of flight attendants, right? You had a conglomerate of them living in Park Hill. That's how they were able to buy a lot of the land because they were able to afford it because they were literally flying and doing all these different things.
Right.
Well, guess what? They took that out, and when they took it out, they slowly began to move these, and by way of very logical, not logical, but very what do you call tricknology, where oh, move over here, right? This is a better area. It's newer. Newer doesn't mean better. So now, since all these kind of reshuffling and reshifting of people of African descent or black people have moved, now all the Europeans and white people moved into those areas, and the black people are what? They're spread, right?
Yeah.
They're still here, but there's no consolidated power, and then henceforth your vote is not going to have the same effectiveness. And this is not just Denver, this is everywhere, right?
Right.
Where gentrification now has moved and thinned you out so that you don't have the power to control your vote. Because if you vote in blocks, then you can control what? Your neighborhood, you can control your community, you can control parts of the city, right? You
Right.
can control them. You see what I mean? This is
Mm-hmm.
when voting, this is how voting should work. But now, since you've lost that power and we bought into some false dream where there's another great, bigger house somewhere else, right? You've lost
Right.
that power. So, I'm all for voting, but I'm all for voting when you use it in a consolidated and in a block oriented way. See, that's why people that are from other nationalities, when you have Asians, they come in, they live together, don't they?
Yeah.
When you have people of Jewish descent or Jewish people, they live together, don't they? Right?
Yo, absolutely.
People from India, right? People from
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan, all these different areas, they come together and they start to build their own little mini community, mini kind of nation in that area, and they gain a power as far as voting is concerned because they realize that there's power in what? In
Num.
numbers.
Right.
So we have been duped into a whole new reality where now we're so thinned out everywhere and we've lived so spread out and we've lost the communal sense. Yeah. Right. You've lost your voting power sense. And so, this is just something to consider as far as how this whole new, gentrification process worked. I mean, think about it. There wasn't a public announcement, but you saw people moving in, right, that were, white into these areas. How did they do it? They didn't, it wasn't broadcast. It wasn't on YouTube. It wasn't on the radio, right? They didn't have what do you call it? A white State of the Union, right? Like you have a black State of the Union. We get all these leaders together and start running our mouths, right? You know, this is
Yeah,
not
and
how it's, right?
some people say things like, there's no, they criticize black people a lot because they always got a leader, trying to follow a leader, and they say there's no leader of white people.
There
There
isn't.
is. Well, there
Well,
is.
there is, but it's not in the sense of what we think is leader,
Right.
right? It's a different model, right? And so they gain all that power not only to be in the inner cities,
Mm-hmm.
which is closer to downtown, closer to business, right? Now they have the power to control the inner city through voting and and that's why you have all kind of new areas being built, right? I lived in Park Hill, right? And so living in Park Hill, you have a place called it was called the Holly, right? It was like a little neighborhood called the Holly.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was built new hardly anywhere. I mean, they had Hiawatha Davis Center there, but nothing. The whole area, new library, new everything, right? Because those individuals begin to move right on in. And the one thing that we didn't realize is that they set up a um not a voting center, but one of the politicians set up right there. So what happens when the politicians set up? They built a new police station right down the street, right? It's chess, not checkers, right? So,
Absolutely.
you know, this is what we talk about when we see this whole, like, if we see this reparations piece come, yeah, you'll have it just like you said, right? You have these little areas where you'll be kind of demarcated and say, okay, well, we'll give you that piece of land, not a whole state. That will never happen. But just these little areas, if it does go through, it'll give you a piece of this and a piece of that. And hopefully you'll be able to do something with it. But Neptune in the fourth house is going to definitely be an interesting ride, people. It's going to definitely shake up and rough these waters of the homeland up so that we can start to bring up these old issues and start to examine it.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Big up to that. All right, as always, thank you all for tuning in. This has been episode 15 of season 5. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Make sure you go and, again, if you hadn't already, like and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you follow all the other channels in the content family, all right? Subscribe to Caliprusa Astrology or whatnot. Ninth Lord Films, the whole gambit and stuff like that, because we got a lot of things coming up, indeed, or whatnot. And, spread the word, Go when you're on these platforms. It's easy when you're listening. You don't think about it. If you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure you like that joint. Subscribe, follow us on Spotify, on Apple, on SoundCloud, on iHeartRadio and all these different places and stuff like that, because it really matters. And you're going to see, this thing start growing, or whatnot. So with that being said, everybody be safe out there, and we will be back with another great episode next week. All right? Peace.
Peace.